Welcome back, everybody, to the second session of Fit Show Live Online Day 2. And we are delighted to be joined by Martin Coyd, who's going to be talking to us about mental wellness in the trades and the construction industry. Now, Martin has a fascinating background, I should say, Martin Coyd, OBE, fascinating background, years and years of experience in construction, and has worked on some really interesting projects, including the building of the Shard and converting the Olympic Village to homes and schools. But he's also really, really passionate about mental wellness and wellness in the sporting industry, and has been involved in doing a lot of work to promote positive mental wellness, and has also managed, I believe, the England wheelchair rugby team. So a man of many, many talents. So Martin, I'm going to hand over to you without further delay. I'll mute my microphone and turn off my camera, but if you want to share your screen, I'll just let you know that everything's okay with that. But over to you.
Okay, let me do the screen share thing. So can you see that?
I can't. I can still only see you.
Okay, so I'm looking at the screen, on screen, yeah.
So, yeah, I think you've just clicked on the screen share button.
Yep.
At the top and gone to window. Opened it.
The reasons I don't understand, I'm getting a blank on the window.
Okay.
Can you see that now, if I'm sharing that now?
No, we can still just see you. So if you're struggling with that, if you want to just drop it to me quickly on email, I can share it at my end, and we can do a Chris Whitty. Next slide, please.
Right, okay. Let me do that for you.
Okay. Apologies for this, guys. It'll just be 2 seconds while I get that over from Martin.
Okay, it's on its way to you now.
Perfect, thank you. If you just want to be introducing yourself and your background, and then I'll just download that and get it loaded up for you, ready to go.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I'm the least likely advocate of mental health and well-being you can imagine. I'm a 56-year-old white privileged male from the north of England. I joined the construction industry at 16 as a chain boy with Fairclough Tunnelling. I was in the army for 18 years, and I've worked in the construction and built environment sector for the past 21 years. I was part of that world where boys don't cry, and it was man up and very, very macho. And my world changed quickly following the suicide of a rugby league player by the name of Terry Newton, who'd played for Wigan and Leeds and Great Britain and was a real warrior athlete. And to everybody's great surprise, at the age of 32, he took his own life. What was even more surprising around this tragedy was the number of other warrior athletes who indicated that they were in the same place and put their hand up and started a Me Too movement. I'm struggling with my mental health well-being, and in this toughest of all sporting worlds, this was a real surprise. I then started to consider my workplace, and I recognised that in the same way in rugby league we never talked about how you felt, and certainly if you weren't feeling very strong and as a man would expect to behave and feel, we never talked about it in that way either. So I began to ask questions. This would be 2011. Began to ask questions and talk about mental health. So I'm a health and safety professional by trade, and we were very good at safety, really good at live accident prevention and preventing people being hurt in the workplace. We were getting better at occupational health, if you want to call it that. So, lungs, musculoskeletal disorders, cancers, etc. But we never ever talked about mental health. It just it was never ever on the radar. So we wanted to do something about it and start to ask the question, and it was a real challenge. So I'm going to pause and see if you got my slides through yet.
I have, yeah. Let me just see if we can share that for you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
So can you see those okay?
Yeah, I can see them.
Brilliant. And just let me know when you want to move that slide on, and I'll do that for you.
Okay, can you stick it on presentation mode?
Oh, it is at my end. Is that at your? Can you? Is that on speakers? Shows slideshow.
Yeah, it's on slide 3 right now.
Okay. That where you would like to be?
Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. So when I talk about the construction sector, and the question is, what does that mean and what's the size of it? Well, I don't intend to read this slide at anybody. I'll explain the couple of statistics, but we are enormous, and we're 9% of the gross domestic product of the UK. We involve 2.1 million people on sites. If you extend that, people working solely in offices or manufacture, it goes to 2.6 million. And I'd say that all of those 2.6 million people either have got or have had brothers and sisters, parents, children, friends, colleagues. So our footprint on the UK is absolutely massive, and I'm particularly proud of belonging to this sector. And we make an enormous impact to everybody's lives every single day, be that traveling to work, being in the workplace, schools, hospitals, where you do your, where you socialize, where you enjoy sport or whatever it is you do. The construction industry and the built environment touches absolutely every part of everybody's life, most of the day, every day. So we're huge. I learned that 94% of people work for organisations employing less than 10 people. This doesn't mean that those organisations are wrong or bad, but it means they're unlikely to have HR teams and employee healthcare programs, etc. They're probably very well looked after, and often in a family environment or close personal relationships. But half of those people and half of the industry are either self-employed or agency workers. So, even less of the support things. And I've worked for the British Army and then giant corporations, global corporations, Mace, Skanska, Lend-Lease, for example, where you can get help at the click of a button or on the telephone. The hard bit is reaching people. Next slide, please. And it'll need clicking twice. I'm going to describe what I actually mean by mental health. And there are two ways of describing it. One's from the health education sector, and one is from the World Health Authority. And they talk about, can you hear me, Nicola? And go to the next slide, please, slide 4.
Yep, this one.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So one before, please.
Okay. Is that
yeah,
correct?
That's it, yeah. So mental health is defined as a state of well-being And when I talk to leaders of organisations, they often think that by opening this can of worms, they sometimes call it, that it'll impact negatively on work. My experience is we get it right, it definitely improves work. And the Health Education Authority talks about the individual and talks about enabling us to enjoy life. And at 56, I've worked out that that's the most important thing that I need to do now. And I've been trying my best for a long time. It also talks about people's dignity and worth, which is critical. And our world is evolving fast, and this is becoming less dominated by white privileged males or the dominant part, and it's opening up to people from different. And I'm talking about the disabled or people whose religious beliefs or even their gender. In the case of females, there's a balance coming, which is really important and excellent for mental health. Next slide, please. And this should be the blue one.
Sorry, bear with me a second. Have you got that?
Thank you. This is the word. This is recent. This is the World Health Organization. Talks about employees and managers working together to protect and promote health, safety, and well-being, and the sustainability of the business, which is what all businesses strive for. Are we going to be here this year, 10 years, and are we going to continue to thrive in what we do? And most people recognise these days that people are critical. I mean, it's what I heard on the previous presentation from Elton, that it's about people, and it's about that communication and making people involved. Next slide, please. To try and articulate what was going on, I was asked what the problem was I was trying to solve, and we didn't know the answer with regards to the problems. And I'm going to talk about suicide, which can be distressing. But in Australia, they'd worked out that for every person who died falling from height, 6 had taken their own life by suicide. So I looked at the UK statistics, and they were 30 falls from height, causing death. So I estimated that the number of suicides in the built environment would be 180. It was a bit tentative, and some people were saying, "Can you prove it?" But at the time, the answer was no, I can't. But it's what we believe. Next slide, please. So this was our start point. And we created something called Building Mental Health. And what we didn't want to do was tell people what the answer was, and say, we're big contractors. We're going to tell you the answer, and you're going to do as you're told if you want to work on our projects, which the big contractors had done for some time. We wanted to let people work things out their own way. So next slide, please, and then briefly on that one, and then click on again. So those were the organisations. You can see some big contractors on there, but there were also colleges and trade unions and specialist subcontractors and clients and trade associations. And we wanted to get it to a place where people could make up their own way. And we suggested a 3-stage, raise awareness, give people training, and provide mental health first aid. And on the slide, you can see there's a number of examples of different ways of doing that. And there isn't one answer that suits everybody and fits everybody. We attracted the attention of CITB, who funded it, Lighthouse Club, which is the industry charity, Construction News, Build UK, Considerate Constructors, and ACAS, who were supporting what we were doing and understanding that we were trying to make a difference, but giving people freedom to do it, in a way that suited them. Next slide, please. We talked with ACAS, and ACAS used to be, well, it still is, the Arbitration and Consultancy Advisory Service, which was a trade union-based organisation. And what we worked out, that it wasn't just the responsibility of employers, it was also included managers and the workforce, where if everybody was pulling in the same direction around mental health and well-being, we had a good chance. So employers, had to be committed and provide resources. Managers had to be educated and open to conversations, and individuals had a contribution to make about stepping forward. Now, our industry, the built environment, is dominated by males, and that stepping forward thing was a real problem. If this was a live audience now, I'd ask you can do this if you wish. I'd say, please raise your hand if you had any training or education or teaching about your mental health and well-being and how you were feeling when you were at school. And I know that none of you have raised your hand. And then the next question I would ask would be, which of you has been impacted by mental ill health? And if it's not you, somebody you love, live with, work with, went to school with, etc. And every single one of you will raise your hand. So we've got this strange dislocation going on in the UK and the first world and Western Europe and all these places where up until recently we've not been discussing mental health and well-being in the workplace, which has been a real challenge and the root of the problem. It was just never ever discussed and taboo. My rugby connection was I was the academy manager at Harlequins at the time, responsible for 12 to 18-year-olds to get them to become professional athletes. And I knew everything about them. I knew how much they could lift on a bench press. I knew how fast they were over 40 and 20 meters. We used to talk to them about everything. We'd ask them about their poo. Is on your diet and your food and are you sleeping? We never ever asked them how they were feeling and what they were doing. And had we asked them, they'd have said, I'm absolutely tip-top, thank you, coach. Please promote me on to the next part of this thing because I want to be an athlete. And it was a real challenge. Next slide, please. We created a charter at Building Mental Health where we invited people to sign up to do 4 things initially. It's up to 5 now, and 750 organisations have done so far. There's no charge, there's no transaction with Building Mental Health, but it says we'll commit to raising awareness, we'll educate people, we'll provide mental health first aid in the workplace. Something that's absolutely critical is recognising others' training and not saying you have to do it our way is best, our way or you can't work here. Because we know we turned off a lot of workers by making them sit through endless days of behavioural safety training. So any mental health training was perceived to be good and where people could benefit. And the last one we've added recently is provide opportunities for support. Next slide, please. We sourced funding from CITB to run 12 courses of 12 people. To create 144 mental health first aid instructors. And this is at a time when CITB was changing its way of funding training. But it recognised there was a crisis in the UK. So a special case was made for mental health training where you can claim grant for it as well. We got to near the end of the programme and they said, we're so pleased, would you like another £500,000? So we will have trained, and the mission was 288 mental health first aid instructors across the whole of England, Scotland and Wales. And that was a challenge in itself because Wales and Scotland have different health leadership. Therefore, mental health was managed in a different way, but we managed to break that down. And supported by Glasgow Caledonian University, we have created a network of trainers. Some are with big contractors, some are standalone training organisations, sole practitioners. Some are trade unions, colleges, trade associations. So I'm hopeful that there is mental health first aid training available near you, wherever you might be in the UK. Next slide, please. We teamed up with the construction industry helpline through the Lighthouse Club. It's a free phone number. And what we were discovering was that people were phoning in saying, that the answer is yes, Jess. I'll message you afterwards. I'm looking at the message on the right-hand side of my screen. But we realised that people were calling in and saying, I've not been paid, I'm owed holiday pay, I'm being treated badly. Oh, and by the way, I'm really struggling with my mental health and I can't pay my mortgage. What am I going to do? So we trained all the people on the helpline to deal with this. And we also now have caseworkers where if somebody is in distress, they'll be contacted following the call to the construction industry helpline. And this is open to the whole, everybody. It can be family members, it can be people who used to work in the construction industry. It's not exclusive and it's free, and it's provided by the Lighthouse Club, which is a marvellous organisation. Next slide, please. My children are 26, 24 and 20, and I recognise that they live the whole of their lives with a device at the end of their arm, and they eat, socialise, travel, everything they do, they entertain themselves with this. So we created an app. It's called the Construction Industry Helpline app. You can download it now, free of charge. You can get everywhere you want in 3 clicks. It helps you manage your how you're feeling on a daily basis. You can do a diary. It's educational, and it will also, within a couple of clicks, connect you to Samaritans instantly, if that's what you need. And like I say, it's free to everybody. There's no restrictions on it. There's no charges for it. It comes from the Lighthouse Club and is part of the Construction Industry Helpline. It is very, very powerful for particularly the young people, but I'm looking at a couple of mobile devices around me as I sit here right now. Next slide, please. So this is and Nicola, I'm happy for you to share these slides afterwards. This is our latest report to where we do. We've trained 267 instructors so far, and I'm not going to read the slides at you, but we are absolutely nailing it with regards to setting out what we achieve to do, of providing training and support around England, Scotland and Wales to everybody in our sector. And there's more to come in a couple of slides' time. One of the questions people ask me all the time is why? How have we got here? And I touched earlier on the fact that we've had a problem that until very recently it was never discussed or taught in schools. And our sort of British culture is one of stiff upper lip and man up and, deal with stuff and, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. And I was in the army and showing any form of weakness was not the done thing. I still play rugby league at 56 years of age, which is a bit stupid because it hurts. But in rugby league, you're not allowed to show any pain and you've just got to deal with stuff. And these are these challenges. And next slide, please. What are the risks? I'll just pick a couple out. The culture and way of working across the whole of the built environment has these risk factors built in. People may struggle with their mental health and self-medicate, which then becomes a vicious circle. 15 years ago, I introduced drug testing and alcohol testing to try and catch bad people and kick them off site. I now recognise that they're not bad people. They were probably doing it because life was extremely difficult, and this just took some edge and some pain away. I'm not suggesting for 1 second that we should tolerate substance misuse on construction or any other type of work site. That's not what I'm saying. But we need to provide support to people who are there, and it's getting through the day. So we have a higher usage. Next slide, please. Other factors that come in, mental illness, depression, and male-dominated injuries have higher rates of depression. And these are some of the things that I began to learn, having not been able to articulate it properly. Next slide, please. Construction News has been a marvellous supporter of where we're trying to do, and they did a survey, and they've done this every year for 3 years. And again, you can read this, but long hours, job uncertainty, working away from home, money, culture, and the drug and alcohol are factors which are contributing to poor mental health in our environment, the built environment. Next slide, please. This was a job, I'll be transparent, this was a MACE project in London. It was called Greenwich Peninsula. We had 774 people on site, and this was about something else rather than mental health and well-being. But we did a survey, and again, you can see the statistics that English as a first language was less than 40% of the workforce, which was quite remarkable, I thought. So 60% were from other countries, and this was just a typical construction project. It also occurred to me that of the people who spoke English as a first language, I'd wager that less than half of those slept in their own bed at night and were with their family and could do the things that were close to them. And it tells me that we have a transient workforce who spend a long time away from what we recognise as home comforts, things we take for granted. And this, again, is putting pressure on people. I dare say this dynamic has changed, over recent years. But as the industry rebuilds itself post-pandemic, we're going to be in a challenge. Next slide, please. So I've sat on boards and I've presented to boards, and they wanted to know where work was within this whole mental health thing. And I saw this guy speak. Tom Oxley is his name. He's very articulate. He works for Bamboo Mental Health. And he presented some statistics which you can see that work is the cause of poor mental health in 7% of cases, which might be extreme stress, pressure, bullying, or similar. And our life is actually much higher risk. And that might be physical health, relationship worries, I could go on. When you combine them with poor work mental health and poor life mental health, it suddenly becomes massive and becomes this huge cause. Next slide, please. In 2017, following some prompting, Public Health England persuaded the Office for National Statistics to look at suicide by occupation. And it came out that the construction sector and built environment sector was 3 times higher than the national average for males. And the numbers were actually well over 400 construction worker suicides per year. So this was staggering, really, and our significant underestimate of less than 200 was a bit of a shock. Next slide, please. Randstad did a survey, and they spent a lot of time in it. And, I can see on there that there are 2,000 major accidents, which are life-changing, but 400 construction worker suicides, which was 10 times higher than the number of fatalities. So I began to question myself as a health and safety professional: how much are we investing in accident prevention? So fall arrest systems, barriers, helmets, PPE, vehicle segregation, manual handling, I could go on. That the industry had invested enormously in preventing accidents, but we hadn't done anything that I could see on positive interventions on mental health and well-being and suicide prevention. Next slide, please. It changed from trade to trade, and I've got some specific stuff around glazing coming up, but this is where it first was, and this is all industries, but you can see construction and particularly the building finishing trades. And I think about painters and dry liners in this sort of scenario, who are just being kicked all the time because the job's behind and get it finished as quick as you can, and running round. Next slide, please. Where do we compare with the rest of the world? Well, we're highlighted by the red arrow, and this is the UK. And these statistics come from the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, which was set up after the Second World War and contains all those countries. So despite the fact we're in crisis, real crisis, there are other countries which are significantly worse. Next slide, please. It varies across the UK. The two bars, the green bar is female and the yellow bar is male. And you can see that males of working age are 4 times more likely to take their own life than women. So it's significantly higher. And it changes from region to region. And this graph tells us that the formerly industrialised areas of the North East, North West, South Wales, Central Belt of Scotland, Yorkshire, etc., where the sort of breadwinning industries where, you know, dad used to go to work and feed his family, where that has been changed, and, you know, there's a lot of 0 hours contract type work going on. The suicide risk is much higher there. Next slide, please. It was Ireland. Ireland worked out that 49% of suicides between 2008 and 2012 came from men in a construction or production background. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we mean. When I say construction, it's these trades there, and that's what the Office for National Statistics has worked on. Next slide, please. Just to put some context on it, Health and Safety at Work Act, and this is for construction sector, came in the 70s, and, you know, in the 80s and the end of the 80s, we were killing over 100 people a year. Through huge investment and massive effort from people, we've significantly reduced that. It's still far too high, but we've gone from, you know, killing 7 and 8 workers per 100,000 per year. It's down at almost 1, which is still tragic and shouldn't be, you know, thought as any sort of success. But we're progressing in the right direction. Next slide, please. And this is what causes people struck by falling objects, moving machinery, falling from height, and trapped are the main causes. Falling from height, which is relevant to the people I'm talking to, of course, is the biggest killer with regards accidents. Next slide, please. In 2019, the Office for National Statistics produced new figures by occupation, and this is the construction sector, and it's actually not 400, it was 722, and it's not that the rates are going up spectacularly and there's more suicide, it's just we've got more accurate data. So every day 2 construction workers take their own life, and this is a shocking statistic, and gives you an indication of the state of play of where we are. The mental health charity Mind say that for every suicide which is completed, there are between 10 and 25 suicides which are unsuccessful. So as we're the highest risk, I'm going to take the highest number, and if I multiply 700 by 25, it's 17,500 is the number of people who are in that place in our sector each year. And the number of people who are struggling every day with their mental health and well-being is into the hundreds of thousands. 500,000 would be a good estimate of where we are. Next slide, please. I can see Brian has mentioned Mates in Mind in the chat, and Mates in Mind was my idea at the beginning, so I'm very familiar with it. And Building Mental Health and Mates in Mind came out around the same time, and we've been striving really hard to make a difference and raise awareness. But unfortunately, the rates, or I'll say fortunately, the rates with managers, so I'll call them white collar workers, are coming down. And they're fairly easy to reach and tend to work in offices and have access to communication. Blue collar workers, and if I can introduce this phrase, no collar workers, the rates are going up. So this again might be some data around there. I've got the glazing industry, and this is from Glasgow Caledonian University data. And the rate there, it's gone up. And the next slide is a graph, and glazers, the glazing industry is the turquoise one, which is third there. So you can see it started off with, and this, forgive the gruesome numbers, it's 30 per 100,000. So for every 100,000 people working in the industry, there's 30 suicides per year as a proportion of 100,000 if the industry is that big. But there's been a bounce 2018 to 2019. Next slide, please. These are some extracts from The Guardian, and Samaritans is the next page. That the global pandemic around suicide has significantly impacted the construction sector, along with people in elementary trades such as cleaning, more than any other sector. I know the construction sector was encouraged to remain in the workplace during the pandemic to keep the economy ticking over, and we were the highest risk, as high as healthcare workers with regards to death from COVID as well. So we got these huge impacts coming our way. Next slide, please. Alok Sharma, I think he's coming on the next slide. He wrote and said thank you. He was the business secretary at the time. And the next slide again, please, which is more from the ONS, which gives more data. Again, go to the next slide, please, Nicola. So what are we doing? The Lighthouse Club is doing some fantastic stuff. I just want to click through these slides fairly quickly, just to get onto some advice. So if you just want to do about 10 seconds between each one. We're absolutely nationwide. We are spending more money than we've ever spent with regards to providing support. The northwest of England is, high. Yeah, keep going with the, and then this is where we are. These are the number of calls through to the helpline, and you can see there are from pre-pandemic, which is the ones on the left-hand side, to the pandemic starting and then lockdowns, etc. The impact that the global pandemic is having on people who work in our sector, and the numbers are increasing significantly. The Lighthouse Club has also had a significant reduction in the amount of money it can generate due to lockdowns and dinners and golf events and other fundraisers. Were impacted significantly, and we were spending the war chest, which was a real challenge. Next slide, please. Keep going. We've introduced something in May this year called Help Inside the Hard Hat, which is an education and training program where people can reach out. If you look at the bottom right-hand photograph, it's a photograph of a hoarding. So you can have a hoarding made up of helping inside the hard hat promotional material. Next slide, please. And as you can see, we can do it's a way of communicating in different languages to people, and just adds on to what we've been doing with building mental health. Next slide, please. We are working with education. We are supporting apprentices, and we've got Lighthouse Beacons going where people can reach out and get help from the Lighthouse Club. Next slide, please. Mind Builder is coming soon. It's an e-learning hub, which we're doing in project with the Single Ply Roofing Association and CITB and Samaritans, where people can get great information, and that's coming very soon. These ones are not important, these green ones, if you want to get through those, because I'm determined to be on time. Keep going, please, until you can see that one with the green dots on it at the bottom. Okay, I've been talking about some pretty grim stuff. This is the Mental Health Foundation. There's never a silver bullet with mental health and looking after yourself, but we can all do some self-help, and I'll give you I'll never know if you do this or not, and I can just see that 85 people are listening, but when it's safe to do so today, I'd like you to do the keep in touch one and phone somebody you haven't spoken to in a while, somebody you care about, somebody who cares about you. When I do it, people think I want money off them or I want to borrow the lawnmower or something, but I just phone them up and say, how are you going? I was thinking about you, and I just thought I'd see how you were getting on. They'll still think you're after something, but it's a fantastic two-way thing where just reaching out to somebody else is good for you and good for them. If you don't fancy that, do the dancing, Northern Soul, I would recommend, on the icon above. Next slide, please. I'm going to guess that the majority of people on this call are leaders and have the ability to influence. Doesn't mean you have to be a CEO. The leader can be the youngest person in the group, maybe the one with the most energy, but we must show leadership. We've got to do something and make a difference, and it takes huge bravery. If you can, and if you get the opportunity to show some vulnerability for yourself, please do so. Communicate, something, talk about it, give people tools, signpost them where to get help. And as a health and safety professional, it's occurred to me for a long time, and I'm even more convinced. You can have the best systems and processes and stuff in the world, but if your people are struggling and are not focused and concentrating because their mental health is poor, stressed, anxiety, depressed, worried about something, I believe that they're more likely to come to harm and not achieve what we need to do. And then there's the last slide coming up, I think. Well, there's two more. I'll just reiterate the construction industry helpline. Next one is the app. And then the last slide, please. That's my telephone number and email address. I'm one of 4 people who volunteer to lead Building Mental Health. We also have a group at Building Mental Health called Guardians, who we check in with to make sure we're travelling in the right direction. And provide support. And our partners are Lighthouse Club, CITB, Mental Health First Aid England, and others, but they're the 3 primary ones. And www.buildingmentalhealth.org will take you to their website, where there's lots and lots of free information and signposting. And I'd encourage all of you to have a look and see if the charter is for you. Sign it, find a way of providing support for the people who make all the difference. And I've finished 1 minute early, I believe. So thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for clicking for me. My apologies, it was a bit clumsy at the beginning.
That's okay. Let me just try and come out of that. Click back into here. There we go. Just trying to find my way back. So put my video back on. Thank you so much, Martin. I know it is a really sobering discussion that we just had, our presentation from yourself, and it's quite a difficult topic, a sensitive topic to approach, but it's one that's really, really important. So, from all of us in the industry, thank you for people like yourself, Martin, who are actually putting the work in and the time and the energy and the passion to try and find the solutions. So there's some fantastic information in there, and certainly some new initiatives that I think perhaps some of our delegates weren't aware of, and help and support out there that they can now go and access. If any of our delegates are sitting there as part of an organisation and they're perhaps worried about a colleague, worried about their own mental wellness, what's one of the best things that they can do to try and just start the dialogue? Because maybe just starting the conversation is the one thing that we're all in control of, that we can all do. So what's the one thing that you think people could do to try and start having that conversation in the workplace?
I'm a mental health first aid instructor, and mental health first aid is exactly the same as physical first aid. So, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can support people. And if a person was bleeding, you'd run over and elevate the limb and arrest the bleeding. And if a person had fallen over, we all have these instinctive things. And with persons struggling with their mental health, we tend to run in the opposite direction because it scares us. So you just have to be really brave and just go and check in on the person. I always say, how are you, rather than are you okay? Because if it's a male and you say, are you okay? They'll say, yeah.
Yeah.
And men will typically deny anything which they perceive as being a bit soft. But just keep checking in. And if you're really worried, ask a direct question. I had to do it yesterday, talking to somebody in the workplace, and I said to them, are you suicidal? And I absolutely shocked him. And he said, I'm not. I said, okay. But I've asked the question, and if you were, you had the opportunity to talk to me. And suicide's the extreme end. It's just people are struggling in general. Ask the question. If they're not struggling in any way, they'll just think you're a nice person.
Yeah.
If they are struggling, they may, and it's difficult for the person. It's difficult for all of us because we're not educated and it's not part of our culture. Just be there. You can communicate with people by looking at them. You don't have to speak. Just a nod and doing that. And what I found is, my poster was up as a mental health first aider in the workplace, and people would know. And it used to take about 5 or 6 engagements before they disclosed the mental health problem. And they would talk to me about strange things. And I used to think, why are these people talking to me about strange things? And they were just working out if it was going to be safe for them to be able to trust me with something which can, because they think it might harm their career or their status within the group or their future employment chances. So it's really difficult. So it's a two-way thing, and it takes time. If the leader shows that vulnerability by talking about their own mental health, it will give permission for others to do so.
Absolutely.
But it takes huge courage. And everybody in our society, everyone in our country has a role to play in this. It's not just about the boss, and we can all make a difference. So, be brave and be prepared to be brushed off and get a dismissive answer. But you've just got to take them first steps.
And I think that's, just to summarize and close the conversation, our business leaders in this industry are phenomenally brave and courageous people who are making big calls on investment decisions and people and, all of the things that it takes to run a business, and debt and financing and strategy. But actually that we just need to show the same bravery in talking about mental wellness, and for businesses thinking about, if you've got first aiders, practical physical first aiders, then have you thought about putting a mental wellness first aider into your team as well, just so that people know there is somebody there should they want to talk to anyone. So Martin, you've been brilliant. I know we've got some really positive comments. I know it's, as I say, a difficult, sensitive and sobering topic, but one that is so important. And I'm sure you've given a lot of inspiration to people there, and you'll be getting some phone calls for hopefully some more advice and support. So thank you so much for joining us. Apologies, your slides didn't quite work for you, but hopefully I didn't do too bad as a Christian aid. Brilliant. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for joining us, Martin.
No problem. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, that wraps up our session on mental wellness. So I'm going to move over now to the next session, which you'll be able to join, which is a pre-recorded video from David Glenwright, who joined us yesterday, looking at exploring a narrative on Instagram. So I'll just end this broadcast now, and I'll see you over in the chat about Instagram.